sources. The two of them apparently, after the shooting took place, were found some ways away in a vehicle, and one or both had shot themselves, but neither of them survived that, as well as three other victims, rather, one of which was a security guard credited with saving lives there. And there's seemed to be more information about Clark. There's a New York Post story. Headline, San Diego mosque shooter Kane Clark identified as former high school wrestler, noting that he attended Madison High School, was a standout wrestler according to school social media page. His grandfather, David Clark, 78, said, "We're sorry for what happened. We know as much as you do. It is a shock." Interesting as they do note in the New York Post story again that both Clark and Velasquez found dead inside a BMW from self-inflicted gunshot wounds just a few blocks away from the Islamic Center, saying that there were anti-Islamic writings found in the suspect's vehicle, and so-called, quote, hate speech was written on the firearms used in the shooting, according to the source. Shotgun and gas can with an SS sticker on the side, appearing to represent a paramilitary organization under Hitler. So now, no. It's going to be interesting to see if there's an attempt to play off of that too much, because you've got a couple of potential wild cards in there. One of the individuals, I mean, the name Velasquez is traditionally a Hispanic name, and we've seen this pop up before. There was a mall shooting in Texas several years ago, and the individual that carried out the shooting was Hispanic, but he also was considered himself a neo-Nazi. And of course, we've always stereotyped neo-Nazis as being, white guys with shaved heads, when in fact that sometimes appears to not be reality. The news that is out, though, it leads everything with the Clark guy, the 17-year-old Clark, and why that appears to be the case, and why there appears to be so much information about him, but not as much about Velasquez. It could be just a number of benign reasons, but that does appear to be the situation. In addition to the fact that one of these individuals could potentially be Hispanic, which would again run contrary to the neo-Nazi or white guy thing, if Democrats are going to find themselves, because we know they like to politicize this stuff, in an uncomfortable position given their Senate candidate, not in California but out in Maine, is somebody that also donned the old Nazi tattoo stuff, and it could be uncomfortable in terms of public conversation for Democrats to try and portray this as some sort of issue with right-wingers when they are the ones running a Senate candidate that had a Nazi tattoo deliberately tattooed on him years ago and did not get rid of it until it was that he was running for office. And it was specifically a tattoo donned by those it was a label for those that specifically guarded concentration camps. And so that the fact that is one of their hopefuls might be enough to keep them from trying to politicize this too much. But it does sound as if there was a security guard, and traditionally you could have one of these good guys with a gun situations that perhaps saved a lot of lives because they had taken those additional steps of protection. And that increasingly is something that we've seen does save lives. We saw it at the synagogue in Michigan or Minnesota, whichever of the two states that shooting occurred, and then here you've got the mosque situation. And I just think increasingly as these things do occur, you're going to find more and more individuals realizing that this is when we do live in an environment in which individuals try to carry out these mass shootings. That's more times than not what stops them. Or they shoot themselves, because by the time law enforcement, if there already is not some form of quote law enforcement, perhaps private, if you will, just a private security there, then you've got to, they've got that entire period of time waiting for a response to go about shooting as many innocent people as possible. Excuse me. There were other reports that the mother of one of the individuals, I think Clark, had called law enforcement earlier that morning because of some notes that were left behind and missing firearms. She felt that her son was essentially going to go out on a suicide mission. And so that's another element, component to this as well. And I'm sure any developments that occur throughout the day, they will be reported on. Coming up, we're going to get the news and weather. An unfortunate ending to the Hotel of Terror battle as the city has worn down and broken down the owners to where, and I don't blame them for this, just because of the emotional stress and health issues that the stress has caused, apparently. They are going to take the $2 million that the city has offered, which is not going to be enough to move the operation. And so this upcoming Halloween season will be its final season. And so yet you just sort of see these historical markers being wiped away from Springfield, with whether it's Hammond's Field, the Hotel of Terror, and just increasingly doing away with so many of the cultural iconic components that make Springfield Springfield. And for what? I mean, it's unfortunate, but the message has been sent. Don't mess with the city. I mean, they will drag it out and they will break you, and it's unfortunate to see that occur. So the details on that coming up as well. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 76. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, a slight chance for showers in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 66. And taking a look at Thursday, a 50% chance of showers with a high near 73.
Now, Mike Land has had the story, and it's an unfortunate, though many people may see it as an inevitable end when a city with all of the resources of taxpayer dollars decide that they want to just crush a business owner that they can do it. The news leader reporting, after years of negotiations and with a public vote on the horizon in August, Springfield's Hotel of Terror would no longer be subject to eminent domain. City manager David Cameron announced Monday the city and the site's owner have agreed on the sale of a property for $2 million. Now, let's not mistake ourselves. This is not an agreement that in any way, shape, or form satisfies what it is that the owners were needing in order to keep it operational. I personally find it a little vile and disgusting that the city puts on this happy face of, oh, gee whiz, I'm so glad we could all come to an agreement. I mean, it's just like tying someone to a chair and beating them relentlessly until they just give in, and then, smiling and shaking hands with them and saying, gee, thanks, it's really great to make this deal. They just were relentless and brutal to this family over the years, regardless of how many times the citizens, would rise up and say, no, this is not the direction that we want things to go. And no matter how many millions they throw at these stupid projects like footbridges that in a year's time won't get the same traffic that one night at Hotel of Terror does in terms of bringing people together. It's just this whole presentation. I think it's disgusting. Now, the city had tried, of course, to acquire the property to, as they say, address the aging Main Avenue Bridge and prevent future flooding by widening Jordan Creek. And we don't need to rehash all of this, but we've been through the history of this, how there wasn't any flooding until they started tooling around and then started to create flooding for the Hotel of Terror, and how there was at one point an agreement for a dollar amount that would have allowed for the continued operation of Hotel of Terror. And then after the agreement was made, the verbal agreement, the city started adding on all of these new costs. And I believe you only do that because you don't want the deal to go through. You want to fool people into believing that that's what you want. But in reality, you want to get the entity, the people, the family to just buckle under. The news leader continues that the Springfield City Council initiated the eminent domain proceeding to force the sale of the property after negotiations stalled last year. And this is a repeat of what we had been through before. And then there were enough signatures gathered, and so at the time, the city decided to not, they just temporarily threw in the towel to apparently regroup. Owners Sterling and Melissa gathered signatures for the referendum to place the question in front of voters. The matter was set to go before voters August 4th. At the beginning of the May 18th council meeting, the city manager announced the agreement to sell the property for $2 million with the contingency that possession will be delayed until January 1st, 2027. Cameron said this would allow the Hotel of Terror to have one final haunting season this Halloween. And, maybe it's nitpicking, but I think it's more than allowing the Hotel of Terror to have one final haunting season, but allowing the citizens of Springfield. Again, this is, for a lot of people, an annual cultural event. And there are other haunted facilities, Dungeons of Doom being one of them. But it's long been a Springfield tradition for many people to hit Hotel of Terror and then either walk over, drive over, or do the little hayride over to Dungeons of Doom and spending the evening doing that with friends and family. After the meeting, the city manager told the news leader the agreement also allows the family to collect some of the bricks from the building after it's demolished. Does this just not almost seem Like they just really want to humiliate these people. We'll let you collect some of the rubble. I just find this whole thing appalling. The news leader notes the city had previously offered the owner $2 million after council's initial attempt at eminent domain was repealed in favor of negotiations. The family never signed the deal, however, and more recently it asked for $3.5 million. Sterling had previously cited the expense of relocating and recreating the same Hotel of Terror experience elsewhere, especially with city code requirements. Quote, after years of uncertainty and legal challenges, our families decided to settle and move forward, he said in a texted statement. This has been an emotional and exhausting experience, and the stress has greatly affected our family, especially my wife's health. Congratulations, Springfield. Another proud moment in city leadership. Mathis also said in his statement, with this settlement, it is important, or rather, it is impossible to rebuild. We are planning to be open this season for the Hotel of Terror's last season. We're grateful to everyone in the community who has supported us and stood by us through the years. A copy of the contract with the property owners anticipated to be made public by the end of the day today. Cameron told the news leader the August election on which the Hotel of Terror question would have been the only one posted by the city would have cost $150,000. Oh, maybe that can go to the new footbridge. He said the one key thing I want to emphasize is the appreciation for the Mathises coming to the table. Well, what other option did you give them? See, this is what I find I just find it disgusting. It's like forcing somebody to do a hostage video and then thanking them for cooperating. We just really want to thank them for working with us on making this hostage video. He went on to say they've been nothing but accommodating in these conversations to arrive at this point. It's emotional. I appreciate the fact they were willing to sit down and have that dialogue with us over several engagements over a period of time, as if they had a choice. It was buckle under or be destroyed. And apparently the city's relentlessness in sending a message was so burdensome that it was beginning to affect the family, particularly the wife's health. This is a city that can't figure out why it is when they then ask for a convention center tax. The people are like, you know what, we don't think so. And apparently haven't learned their lesson. And instead have decided this is why you can't trust the citizens. Because they make dumb decisions like voting against convention center taxes and wasting their time trying to keep alive historic and cultural icons of the Springfield area. I hate what the city put this family through. And, the fact that they lasted as long as they did is probably something that most families would not have been able to last through. I think it says a lot about their character. And it is, as far as I'm concerned, another stain on the city of Springfield. And I know it seems like I keep going back to the Jefferson Footbridge, but clearly they had the money. They had the money. This is a city that every so often decides to have a, quote, town hall style event because we got an extra $1 million here and an extra $1 million there, and we've got this COVID fund money we don't know what to do with. Somebody help us figure out how to spend it. They wanted to destroy and send a message to anyone who's a business owner in Springfield. Don't screw with us. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. All of those home loan needs. Maybe you find yourself in trouble and you've got a home, but you're getting behind on the mortgage and you just keep telling yourself it'll be fine, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. But before too long, oftentimes it is not fine and you run out of options. The Carrickers, Alex was with us Friday talking about, if you get to the point where you fear that's going to happen, visit with them. There may be ways out. They may not be ideal, but instead of losing your home, perhaps refinancing or reverse mortgage or selling your home so that you can get into something smaller or rent something for 6 months to a year at lower cost in order to get yourself ahead of the game again. And it's never fun stuff to do. It takes a lot of effort. Sometimes moving isn't fun, but there are oftentimes options. And so whether it is an emergency situation like that or you're looking all starry-eyed, very excited as you embark out on life to buy your new home, I recommend that first stop that you make for your home loan needs is iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 76. Tonight cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, a slight chance for showers in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 66. And for Thursday, a 50% chance of showers with a high near 73.
These two stories back to back came just days apart, but just the timing of it is somewhat interesting. So the town hall story from a few days ago, Janine Pirro issues threat to parents of children who participate in teen takeovers. And this was from Friday. And she had announced that her office will target the parents of children who participate in violent teen takeovers in the District of Columbia. During a press conference, she noted that these takeovers have terrorized her neighborhoods, shut down businesses, and wasted hard-earned tax dollars of law-abiding residents who just want to live and work in peace. Starting today, my office will aggressively prosecute parents under D.C.'s curfew law. The statute makes it unlawful for an adult to enable, facilitate, or permit a minor to engage in delinquent acts. The penalty is up to 6 months imprisonment. So if the evidence shows the parent knew or should have known or permitted or failed to prevent participation, we're going to charge them. If you drop your kid off and you fail to supervise them or you let them skip school to join the chaos, you're going to face fines, court-ordered classes, and possible jail time. And so then the subsequent story From Daily Caller, Janine Pirro almost instantly got what she wanted. Right at the end of the weekend, a mass of black teenagers fighting each other demolished the interior of a Chipotle restaurant in D.C.'s Navy Yard. For anyone who's been local for the last 10 years, the venue's no surprise. The once peaceful and beautiful Navy Yard has, for the past few years, constantly served as backdrop to riotous behaviors, murder attempts, robberies, and grand theft auto, all in plain view of the public. Video of the Chipotle brawl went viral Sunday evening. One detail about it stood out to onlookers: a scared family with young children huddled behind a wall just witnessing the melee. And then that story references Pirro just, again, days prior, talking about holding parents accountable. I think there's a lot of gray area when you are talking about whether parents are responsible. And I know so often the gut instinct is, you just say, where are the parents? Where are the parents? Where are the parents? And because the problem in certain areas of the country are not only not getting better, but they're getting worse, it oftentimes leads people, you just want to do something. Like, we'll just arrest the parents. Here's just the reality of it. Particularly when you're talking about 15, 16, 17-year-old. These, I don't even like to call them kids. These young people, more often than not, don't give two dangs about what their parents, or in all likelihood their mom or their grandmother, because that's who they live with, say. They don't care. They're just as defiant to whomever it is that they live with as they are to anyone else. Many times the grandmother may, and I note the grandmother, grandma, because it's not an uncommon situation for inner city youth to be living with the grandma or just a mother with no father figure. I mean, this is structurally the foundation of this problem. It is the complete destruction of the traditional family unit. And ideologically, we know that's something that the left is against. And these are the results. It isn't just anecdotal. This has been noted. This has been studied. This has been proven over and over and over again. And while simply because someone lives in a traditional family unit doesn't mean that everything is fine and wonderful and that there aren't ever any sort of problems that arise with children in a situation like that, overwhelmingly, having a traditional family is something that greatly diminishes the likelihood of crime being committed by kids, as well as dropout and any sort of delinquency. That's just reality. And more often than not, the kids that are behaving this way, or the young people that are behaving this way, they have no respect for the person that they live. And there's no way for the oftentimes single female to control the 16 or 17-year-old gangbanger. Now, Janine Pirro noted here that this would be an attempt by law and order to go after parents that facilitate, that, if you fail to supervise them. Well, that's very open to interpretation. I look at, number one, will this work? And I just don't believe that it will. I don't believe locking up some 72-year-old grandmother because it was determined that she could have done more to keep the 17-year-old grandson gangbanger from going and throwing chairs at a Chipotle. I just don't think that's going to change things. I also can't imagine if you are in that situation as an adult and you already are dealing with potential fear of your own grandchild or your own son because they're maybe not the grandchild or the child himself, but the crew that he's wrapped up in. And then, on top of that fear for your own safety, fearing that you are going to be held accountable for any gang activity that they carry out. I mean, I also believe that this feeds into this notion to the actual criminals that it's not really your fault. That some of the responsibility for your actions is this other person over here, your grandmother or your mom, and so we're going to go after them as well. And I don't think creating an environment that absolves the actual criminal of some of the crime is a positive thing either. Now, listen, if it's a clear-cut situation of conspiracy, or you've got the parent that is dispatching the kids out to commit crimes because they're taking a cut of it, sort of like Joe Biden taking 10% from Hunter Biden, that's a different story. That's a clear-cut violation of the law. But if this is simply out of frustration that, listen, your kid is continuing to do this stuff, so we're going to hold you responsible, I just don't think that is the right approach. It's going to have any real meaningful difference and could potentially put away people who are already so frustrated they have no idea what to do with these 17-year-old gangbangers. Now, oftentimes it's the lack of father figure. It's the lack of the traditional family unit. Oftentimes it is just a negligent single parent that has all but given up. They've thrown their hands in the air because they're like, nothing I do. I mean, they sneak out at night. If you have some 16, 17-year-old that says, I'm going out, and you say, no, you're not, and they hold up the middle finger to grandma and say, you don't tell me what to do, and walk out of the house. I mean, what are you supposed to do? To me, the legal answer here is start locking how many of these people that commit these crimes are right back out on the street 2 or 3 days later. Start locking them. Well, we got to build more prisons. Okay, do it then. The amount of money, the amount of resources that gets wasted, if we have to double up on the size of facilities in order to accommodate sentences that are more meaningful, sentences that increase the likelihood either that, young people are like, well, I don't want to go to prison for 10 years. It's not worth it. And even for those that it doesn't rehabilitate, because I know some people, well, prison doesn't rehabilitate, and that is true. But you know what? I mean, some instances I think it is possible, but in others it isn't. That's fine. You're getting them off the streets. You get them off the streets so that law-abiding citizens don't have to be fearful. So that you don't have to have your family at a Chipotle and then you're cowering behind a dividing wall in fears that at any given moment a stray bullet may take out one of your kids. Lock these people up for a long time. And because priority number one should not be rehabilitation. Priority number one should be making the streets safe, and that means sweeping through, and when these individuals carry out these sort of criminal acts, they go away for a very, very, very long time. Then after that, once the streets are safe, you want to start toying around with the idea of how do we make these people productive members of society now that we have them? Fine, go ahead. We'll have that luxury. I don't think somebody like Janine Pirro is completely wrong-headed, and I know a lot of people, my instinct is also at times, you just get so upset and so angry because the parents are absent. But going after them is just not an approach that I believe is going to ultimately work. It is oftentimes going to hold people accountable who they themselves have absolutely no ability to control, particularly you're talking about these teenage inner city kids. It sends a message that they're not fully responsible for themselves when we really need to be sending them the opposite message, and that you are 100% responsible for yourself and your own actions, and you will be held accountable, you and you alone. This is not something that you can just shove off on somebody else in terms of accountability. It is you. Now, that's the legal approach. But that doesn't solve the ultimate foundation of the problem, which again goes back to family and faith, and that's just not something that government's able. That's a cultural thing, which is frankly why it's so much more difficult in terms of tackling and fixing. Because we just like the idea, we just create a law and make these problems go away, and to a certain degree, you can stop the bleeding. But the source of the bleeding is something it's a much, much deeper cultural problem. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company text line. Grandma raising her grandchild isn't the parent. Don't go after her, but maybe make the parents responsible. Well, and here's a concept. In the previous segment, I talked about why it is. I just don't feel that is the answer for a number of reasons. Oftentimes people propose solutions to crime that are nutty and don't make sense. I don't believe that's not how I would categorize people who believe we should go after parents. I don't agree with it. I don't think that it is something that would work, but I understand where it comes from. I don't think it's a lunatic idea. But here's a thought, because think about this. let's say you've got 17-year-old gangbanger. It's defiant. Constantly, mother trying to work 2 jobs, pay rent. It clearly isn't able to be at home all of the time, isn't able to be at the school when her son or grandson, just decides to skip school. And the idea of, okay, let's say it's a single mom, and the determination that she's not doing enough in order to make sure that her child is not out there committing crimes. Does it make sense to go after her legally when the father is 100% absent? Completely, with absolutely no contact whatsoever with the child? More often than not, these are situations in which there is no father in the home because the father decided he didn't want to be a dad, didn't want to be a father. Too much of an inconvenience, and because we make that no big deal, there's absolutely no social stigma to it. There's no shame to a guy who knocks up a chick and is like, whatever, that's your problem, not mine. If a parent is going to be held legally responsible for their child that is out of control, which parent should be held more accountable? The one that is paying the rent and is working 2 jobs to try to keep the lights on, that is doing everything, in all likelihood, she can to make sure that her child is on the right path, or the father that's completely absent by choice? I think there's a strong argument that if you're going to go after one parent, the one that actually is more responsible for the environment being created that has led to the child, in all likelihood the son, running around rampant through the city committing crime, it's probably the father who's just decided to be completely absent. Now, as I said, I don't think that ultimately is the approach to take. But if we are looking to assign blame, because, think about, because, we know that's how it's going to play out. If the mother is at the home, the father's completely absent, they're going to go after the mother. The one who's actually doing something, as negligent as it may or may not be, as opposed to the father who just, I'm not going to have anything to do with it whatsoever, despite the fact this is my child. It seems like that doesn't add up to me. Just a thought. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. This may be not the best thing to admit, but I don't know. I just kind of believe in being transparent. I realize oftentimes I think, oh, there's the thing going on with Iran. I don't know if there's a ceasefire, there's not a ceasefire. I don't know if the straits opened or what.
I think
You
we're
know what I
still in a
mean?
ceasefire, and I think the strait is still closed.
But then I'm like, is that closed for everyone or just the Iranian? It's very fluid. It's constantly changing.
Yeah,
and
lots
that,
of news.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean it's the wrong approach. I find, probably like a lot of you, just like, okay, just when's it going to be over? And that is, culturally speaking, a very short attention span compared to what we had once upon a time. We just have much shorter attention spans. Yeah, I mean, things once upon a time we'd have patience and well, it's only been 6 months. We're like, it's been 6 months. Much different approach. And Trump had said, oh yeah, I was going to launch another massive attack yesterday, but I did not because, quote, I was asked by the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, and the President of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, to hold off on her planned military attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was scheduled for tomorrow. And he said that there's serious negotiations now taking place, and that in their opinion, citing those very specific people in those positions with their very specific names, a deal will be made, which will be very acceptable to the United States of America, as well as all countries in the Middle East and beyond. So this was a post on Truth Social. I think it's deliberate, and it's very specific. He's like, these are the exact people I talked to. This suggests to me that the transfer of this responsibility may be underway. And from the very, very beginning of all of the potential scenarios, one of them that arguably was the best was that we kind of boom, bang, knock them out, and then some of our now allies in the Arab world will kind of take it from there. And then it's their thing as allies of ours. And that could be what this is signaling here, that this is putting everyone on notice. Hey, yeah, these guys over here, these Arab countries and these specific leaders, they're working on something over there, and I'm going to step back a little bit. I'm going to defer to them, and we'll see how this goes. If that is what is occurring here, this is potentially a very positive development that's occurring. Now, of course, we will see. I'm also going to find it to be very interesting to see if there is any sort of backlash and accusing Trump of being, quote, controlled by these Arab countries, because we know that much of the criticism of this entire conflict has been predicated upon the fact that the Jews were controlling Donald Trump, that Israel was calling the shots. And when it appeared to some people as if that were the case, that was reason for a great deal of massive criticism. So will that criticism also come along with, oh, these Arab countries are now controlling Donald Trump, or is that scorn reserved for Israel? Springfield's Talk 1041. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. A lot of you may have outdoor area that isn't quite as accommodating as you like, or it's fine. A lot of times you buy a home and there's sort of the basic stuff. That's how it was when we bought our home. It was a very tiny, I think the homeowners had done it themselves. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but you get those corner pieces and the soil starts eroding and so it gets a little bit lopsided and we just wanted it done right, and we wanted to have a place that was impressive. That was an outdoor seating area. And so Hunter Hardscapes, which I had met Daniel several years before we actually were ready to start our project, and I knew because of the projects that he did and the quality of work he did and the people he had done the work for, that was the route we wanted to go, even if that meant waiting a little bit longer, and even if that means it cost a little bit more. It is so worth it, because if you're going to be making that sort of investment, this is my approach on it. I'd rather spend the extra to have it done extra good, to have it done very well by experts that take pride in what they do with higher quality product, than save 20% but have about 50% of the quality. That's just not a wise use of dollars, in my opinion. And if that's the sort of quality work you want as well for hardscaping, landscaping, lighting, drainage, Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, hunterhardscapes.com, also Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. Yesterday was another day of the Luigi Mangione trial, and the big headline that came out of it was the judge throwing out some of the evidence. And I don't understand this. I don't know if this is a ruling that makes sense or not, but apparently when he was caught at McDonald's, probably seen that video, he's the one who, quote, allegedly assassinated the healthcare CEO. And he was at McDonald's with a backpack, and so when he was arrested, one of the officers got into the backpack and found a few things. And then the bag was taken back to the station. It was searched further, in which a few other things like the gun and the manifesto were found. And the judge ruled that the stuff found while at the McDonald's wasn't a legit search, but the other stuff was. So, again, I don't know if that's a good ruling or not. I don't know the law regarding that in New York, but that was a decision that was made, and so that's getting some headlines. And it seems as if the important stuff, the gun and the manifesto, which his attorneys are like, it's not a manifesto, it's a diary, those seem like the two really important things. Well, what isn't getting as much attention is the self-proclaimed Mangionistas. Now, these are fangirls of the accused assassin. By their full acknowledgement, they have little blog pages that follow him, that worship him. They're all about defending him. And there's three specifically: Abril Rios, Ashley Rojas, and Lena Weisbrot. And, like I said, they're fangirls. When yesterday, standing outside the courtroom, having discussions with journalists, one of the fangirls said, F. Brian Thompson. That was the victim. She went on to say, that's all I want to say, F. Brian Thompson and F. his mom. One of the other fangirls, Weisbrot, said, quote, his children are better off without him. They need to learn to not be like their dad and enjoy the blood money, kids, end quote. The other fangirl said he's responsible for more deaths than bin Laden, and I remember Americans celebrating when bin Laden was killed. It's not like we don't understand heroic violence or like when violence is good. So these are three individuals that don't hide the fact that they celebrate what it is that and they don't even, they're not even there trying to argue that he's innocent. Their words fully suggest that they not only believe he is responsible for the assassination, but they think it's a wonderful thing. The reason that this is so significant, aside from the fact that increasingly people on the left are embracing and celebrating the murder of people that they don't like, is the fact that they are granted access to the trial because Mamdani's office in New York City granted them press passes. We're talking about the culture of crime earlier in the previous hour in a different capacity. But at the same time, when you have a mayor's office that is granting special access to people who celebrate the murder of someone that they disagree with socially, economically, politically, when you have a mayor's office that is granting special access to a trial to three individuals who fully believe he did commit the murder and celebrate him for it, that is one jacked up message. And it should come as no shock when people on the left, officially from a mayor's office, are given that sort of special access. Because these aren't individuals that should be confused with, reporters. I think they play themselves as independent journalists. And believe me, I believe that in today's day and age, there are independent journalists that actually do a much better job than actual journalists. You know what I mean by actual journalists, than the traditional journalist. And they should be given access to situations like this, to a trial like this. But that's not what these girls are. These are fangirls of someone they fully believe and celebrate for murdering a healthcare CEO. And a Democrat mayor, the City Hall of New York City, giving them access to the trial so they can be there to cheer them along. Just another flash of brilliance from the Democrat Party in 2026.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 76. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, a slight chance for showers in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 66. And taking a look at Thursday, we'll see a 50% chance of showers with a high near 73.
And so it sounds as if that, and Mike Landis had the story there, Kehoe is expected to sign the legislation raising the speed limit in some of the areas from 70 to 75, which means, you can go 80 or 85 now. One of the pieces of legislation that did not pass was the elimination of inspections for vehicles. This was something that numerous times had asked different lawmakers, and they all seemed to think that that would be something that would pass. I think we talked with Darren Chappell last on this, and it was held up in the Senate. That is a thing I did not know the vast majority of states don't do. I like to be pretty in tune with, when you're a little unique as a state. And I guess I just had this belief, this assumption that a majority of states had these inspections. And in fact, it's not a majority of states that do. Different states have different variations. Some have just emissions test instead of rolling your vehicle in as you do in Missouri, and they test all of these different mechanical components to your vehicle, and then you pay $15 or $12 or whatever it is in order to show that you're, quote, road ready. Some states don't do that at all. They just hook a hose to your exhaust pipe and you run it for a little bit, and then they're like, yep, you're good to go. And then there are just other states that have variations. But I will say, it was a surprise to me that Missouri is one of the few states, or the minority of states, that actually require what we require, and we will continue to require that. So you and I, at least coming up into the upcoming sessions years, will still get to make those fun little trips to get the inspections before we go get the renewal done at the DMV. The hopes of property taxes being dealt with, nada. The headline from KY3, Missouri legislative session ends without property tax reform. Missouri lawmakers wrapped up the 2026 legislative session Friday without passing property tax reform, despite both parties calling it a top priority. Well, of course. In negotiations behind the scenes, a property tax reform bill died when lawmakers couldn't come to an agreement. All year, lawmakers from both the House and Senate, and both Republicans and Democrats, said getting Missourians property tax relief was their number one priority. Number one. I do believe there's been, particularly when it comes to the income tax, a lot of really hard work put into it. I believe that there have been a number of lawmakers that have dedicated a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of patience, a lot of discipline. There certainly has been a tremendous amount of effort to get something done that I believe the establishment doesn't want to get done. And there was significant movement forward on that. Property taxes are just so wrong and so bad. And I can't help but going back to that week-long period, maybe a little longer, maybe less, in which they passed all of the tax incentive legislation in hopes of keeping the Chiefs here, in hopes of keeping the Royals from leaving, and how it showed that if something really was a priority, they could get it done. And that really being such a recent memory, and then hearing, well, property tax really now, or reform, I mean, that was a number one priority. I'm like, really? Because we've seen when something is a priority and it requires a lot of deal making, it requires a lot of arm twisting, it requires a lot of behind closed doors conversations. They managed to get some of this stuff done. But stadiums and football teams are a lot more exciting than constituents who have to pay property taxes, I suppose. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Hey, that's me. The Pyramid Roofing Company with the recent hailstorm plus rain in the forecast for the next couple of days. Some of you may experience leaks or yellowing on your ceiling. Now, if that's you right now, I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. They offer emergency tarping services if you need them, free roof inspections, and they work with you through that insurance process. Whether you need financing for your deductible or if you just want them out there for that adjuster meeting, they make that a top priority. Plus, they offer discounts for our military and our first responders on new roof installs. If it is time to have the Pyramid team out to your home, reach out to Josh and schedule that free roof inspection. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com. And that's what I have to say about that.
I just came across a story. Meredith Sisko passed away. She was, I believe, I want to say she was in the movie that Jennifer, what's her name was. I just came across this, so I'm discombobulated on it. Winter's Bone. And did a lot of the soundtrack for that. And she, I believe, even was in the movie. I think this is the same person. Because I want to say I was actually Facebook friends with her for a while. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that is, she's from West Plains or Butterfield. So, yeah, I just saw that on Facebook that the Missouri Folk Arts Program posted, "We sit with the news today of the loss of Meredith Sisko, a longtime friend of Missouri Folk Arts who brought her great talents and wisdom to our traditional arts apprenticeship program, Community Scholars Network, and most recently, the 2025 Living Traditions Fellowship. Those efforts are just a sliver of Meredith's contributions to the cultural life of Ozarks and Missouri." And then it goes on to talk a little bit further, and, sad. Yeah, Winter's Bone. I'm almost. I know that some of her
No, you're
music.
right.
Yeah,
You're right.
And I think did she sing? Was she in the movie itself also?
Sure,
It just
up all of the songs that she
yeah,
did.
it seemed like there was a scene in I haven't seen that movie since it came out in the theater, but I want to say that she was actually in the film also. Well, here's a repeat story from the previous summer and the previous summer and the previous summer, as far back as I don't remember. But Springfield Public Schools offer free summer meals for children. This summer, Springfield Public Schools will participate in the U.S. Department of Agriculture's SUN, S-U-N, all caps, meals program, offering free nutritious meals to all children 18 and under. Now, last I checked, 18 was an adult, but it's the government, so you don't really question them. Through Sun Meals, families can ensure their kids continue to eat well when school is out. No registration or ID is required. So how do you prove that you're 18 or under? It's probably racist to ask such things. Kim Keller, Director of Students Nutrition for SPS, quote, "Good nutrition shouldn't take a summer break. Sun Meals make it easy for our community's children to stay fueled and focused throughout their summer. So all children and teens 18 and under, free breakfast and lunch if you want. Monday through Friday, June 1st through June 22nd. Meal times vary by site. Boyd, Delaware, Fremont, Harrison, Hickory Hills, Mann, Sherwood, Westport, Williams, Carver, Jarrett, Central Schools. No application or identification is needed for children 18 and under." Now, this is, of course, the joke of it all. How, if no application or ID is needed for children 18 and under, how do you, what if somebody that's 22 years old comes along and they're like, "Oh, I'm 19. If I claim I'm 19, I don't have to show any identification, or 17 rather, under the 18 or under. If I say I'm 18 years old, according to the story, I do not need to show any identification proving that I'm 18 or under. Adults accompanying children must sign in at the office with a valid ID using the Hall Pass Visitor Management System. But again, how is it that you prove I am an adult that needs a valid ID? Since anyone 18 or under does not need one, if I tell you I'm 18 years old, then that means I don't need to show you an ID? In July, meal sites change. Free breakfast and lunch will be served at Boyd, Disney, Jeffries, Sherwood, Williams. The USDA's Sun Meals program helps ensure children have access to healthy meals throughout the summer months when school meals are not available. Meals follow USDA nutrition guidelines and are served in a safe, supervised environment. You can go to sps.org to find out where to get free food. You can text the word food to 304-304 or call 1-866-3-HUNGRY. The first hour we talked about D.C. and Jeanine Pirro announcing that they would begin to go after parents that do not take responsibility for their own children in terms of crime. If your child is out there committing crimes and it is discovered, it is believed that as a parent you could have prevented this, you're not supervising them, you aren't, quote, parenting them, then you will be legally held accountable and can go to prison. We send a lot of mixed messages in our culture. Increasingly, we have government erode the responsibility of parents. Increasingly, we go so far as, into some instances, tell parents that they don't have the right to parent their children until the government can't figure out what to do with them, and then they want to hold you accountable. One of the very basic fundamental responsibility of any parent, this includes animals, making sure that your child is eating and drinking, and then you give them shelter. This is the very bare minimum. And even that, government is training people to feel as if it's not their responsibility to do that for their own children. This does not result in a healthy outcome. And it isn't as damaging from the parent's perspective, but training young people to believe that even when they're not in school, listen, when you're in school and you're there at school and they're providing lunch at school because you're at school, you got to be fed. But what does it instill? What does it ingrain in a young person regarding responsibility of children when they are raised to see it or experience it as normal that their parents don't even feed them, that government is responsible for it? Do we really think that that's going to result in a long-term positive outcome? We grapple increasingly with young people feeling entitled, young people feeling that you should not have to work for anything, young people feeling that they should get whatever they want, young people feeling that, if you just tax a few billionaires, that means government can give you anything and everything you want. Are we ever going to get away with that if at a very young age we're teaching them even feeding you is something that should not be a responsibility of your own parents? That's the government's job. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. Not positive outcomes.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 76. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, a slight chance for showers in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 66. And for Thursday, a 50% chance of showers with a high near 73.
A number of you had texted in regarding the story. Once again, the Springfield Public Schools will be offering free breakfast and lunch to anyone 18 or under. Now, theoretically, they are supposed to, well, I guess kids, it doesn't even really specify that theoretically they're supposed to be students. So just anyone and everyone. It's just giant free food program at the expense of the taxpayers. And the question was, a number of you, well, how do they know how much food to prepare? Well, first off, it's government, so they don't worry about these things. Secondly, if they run out, to them, that's a success. Or it's not a success. That is what's the best way to put this? That means that they need to do more of it. That's what that means. So if you are running out of food, you're offering free food, you're broadcasting free food, you're making sure everyone knows you don't need an ID. And so you have people from all over the place outside the community, people who are, adults even, that just claim that they're minors and therefore do not need an ID. And you run out of food, they'll say, oh, well, we need more. Look at all the people we're reaching. People in government have this weird perspective of the worse things are, the more they're succeeding. So the more people that they have to take care of because they can't take care of themselves, they somehow see that as a good thing. We touch this many people. That's really not a good thing. The several years that and a lot of this is just money. It's a way to get money. The few years I worked up in Milwaukee, they were piloting a program like this, but you couldn't expect the kids to actually come to a school, so they were just sending out food trucks. And they would just drive through neighborhoods like an ice cream truck and give free food, I think they were sandwiches. And whenever they ran out of the free food for kids while driving through neighborhoods, they touted that as evidence, as proof that there were all these starving kids. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, particularly in the summertime, and you're out running around, and if there's food to be eaten, you grabbed it and you ate it. That's what you do as a kid. How many times have we heard? Many of you heard, you're going to eat us out of house and home, because just constantly eating, you're growing. Now, I know things are a little bit different. I mean, the eating component's still there, but a lot of it for us, because we were exercising, we were outside. I mean, we weren't deliberately exercising, but we were playing, and so we're burning off calories, and we become hungry. But to equate a child accepting free food as proof that they are, quote, hungry in the context of, a child who hasn't eaten in days is ridiculous. I've never believed a lot of the way that they do a lot of these studies, a lot of these surveys. Several years ago, there was one, and they really, and you may have seen this on television, it was a public service announcement about how a survey showed that 1 out of every 4 children went to bed hungry at night. I thought, well, now, how'd you do that? How'd you come up with that number? Because what I imagine in all likelihood is you call about, you do surveys, you call, get a hold of someone. I'm so-and-so with such and such. We're wondering if you could answer a few questions. And one of the questions, does your child, when you are sending them to bed, ever say that they're hungry? Well, yeah. I used to say that, when you're a kid, you just, or you didn't want to go to bed. I'm hungry. We just ate dinner 2 hours ago. You're fine. Go to bed. Well, that it's not the same thing. A kid complaining that he doesn't want to go to bed because he's hungry isn't the same thing as a child going to bed hungry. And I think also about how all of these different programs and the massive amounts of money and the people who pat themselves on the back that we're really solving this problem, yet the statistics never seem to budge. That doesn't seem like solving the problem to me. That seems to me like perpetuating the problem. Just keeping it going by making people reliant on you to fish for them. I know a lot of times this stuff sounds so cruel and it's the survival of the fittest. Is this approach working? Ever since the brilliant politicians who want your vote in Washington, D.C. came up with this idea, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of you. We're going to start a war on poverty. I mean, you think the war with Iran's going on too long? How long is this war? It's like the war on homelessness with Gavin Newsom in California. Billions and billions get spent, and then you double or triple the amount of homeless people. I mean, it's just insanity. And the amount of money that gets assigned to, quote, fix certain problems, and not only does it not fix the problem, but the problem seems to get worse. What do we do is just keep doing it. Like, that's what works. My way of doing things is cruel. Teaching people to fish instead of just waiting for a handout for a fish, and then if I don't give them a fish, they go hungry. That's compassion. I guess we just have different views of it. We're going to get a traffic update, and then I want to talk about the Justice Department announcing this $1.776 billion pool of money. You get 1776. $1.776 billion of money that the Justice Department says will be used to pay people who have been victimized by weaponization of government. Analysts say that the payouts could benefit various recipients, including January 6 defendants and members of President Trump's inner circle. As you can imagine, the left is pitching a massive fit over this. How dare Donald Trump craft some sort of payout for people who may have committed crimes, who they claim were simply victims of weaponization of government. This is just a way for Donald Trump to pay his people. I'd like to talk about that coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Justice Department announcing a $1.776 billion pool of money it says will be used to pay people who say they've been victimized by the Biden administration's weaponization of government against them. This is a Washington Times story, by the way. Analysts, what do they analyze? Yeah, I don't know. But the Washington Times found some analysts that say the payouts could benefit various recipients, including January 6 defendants and members of President Trump's inner circle. Well, yeah, probably could. I mean, if there is going to be a pool of money that works as some sort of payout to individuals that were perhaps wrongfully accused or were disproportionately punished, yeah, probably some of those people will be Trump supporters. President Trump agreed to drop his $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS, which he had filed over an agency's contractor's illegal leak of his tax information during his first term. The pool of money was dubbed the Anti-Weaponization Fund. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said it will pay for victims of lawfare and weaponization. It was seeded with $1.776 billion, suggesting the year 1776, the year of the Declaration of Independence. And if you listen to Democrats, it's also secret code for terrorism. The Justice Department said it will issue formal apologies with the payments. Quote, the machinery of government should never be weaponized against any American, and it is this department's intention to make right the wrongs that were previously done while ensuring this never happens again, Mr. Blanche said. President Trump's opponents were incensed at the idea and the president. Chuck Schumer saying, quote, of all of the corrupt things he's done, this is one of the most depraved. No president should be able to use the Department of Justice as a personal rewards program for the people who helped him attack our democracy. Now, I think that there's a lot of room for misuse here. And a lot of questions, are these going to just be blanket checks that are written out, or is this going to be a case-by-case situation in which you have someone that, was waved into the Capitol by law enforcement, and so they spent 3 years in jail for that, while left-wing activists storm the Capitol and get a $50 fine? Those are situations in which I believe it is clear that citizens were treated more harshly because of their political beliefs. And if you do have a pool of money that is supposed to be going to victims of weaponization, to me, that would qualify. Now, we don't know how specific this is going to get, how case-by-case this is going to get, versus, again, is this just going to be a sweeping writing of checks with President Trump's face on them? But as you hear Democrats pitching a fit, and probably some establishment Republicans, about the idea of taxpayer dollars going towards individuals that got caught up with police and law enforcement while they were protesting. Remember some of these stories. New York City agrees to pay $13 million to protesters arrested in the 2020 Black Lives Matter demonstrations. CBS News, March 25, 2022, jury awards $14 million to George Floyd protesters in Denver. The Guardian reporting around that same period of time, U.S. cities to pay record $80 million to people injured in 2020 racial justice protest. Notice they're not riots, of course. That article noted that at least 13 U.S. cities at the time of the publication will pay more than $80 million total to protesters who claim that they were injured as a result of law enforcement action, ranging from being tear gassed to being shot with projectiles and having filed dozens of civil lawsuits. New York, Philadelphia, Denver, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Oakland, Milwaukee, Kansas City, Portland, among at least 19 to have agreed settlements so far, many more being sued coast to coast, including San Jose and Washington, D.C. The New York City Police and its police department, or New York City and its police department, will pay upwards of $6 million to 320 protesters who claimed that they were subject to excessive force. The sum of $9.25 million paid to hundreds of Philadelphia protesters. La Mesa, California awarded one local woman $10 million after an officer shot her with a projectile. Aside from all of the damage and the death and the murder at the hands of the Democrat protesters during the so-called Summer of Love, it was a massive cash out for so many of these protesters. Governments run by Democrats, hand over fist, writing them checks like they were Publishers Clearinghouse. So for those same people to pitch some sort of fit over a fund going the other direction and going towards people as some sort of settlement if they were the target of weaponization because they were Trump supporters, forgive me if I'm not buying it. Once again, this is the dual justice system that the left has created in this country, in which taxpayer dollars can go to individuals on the left who fight with police, who attack police because they accuse them of excessive force, using tear gas and so forth. But the minute somebody who supports Donald Trump says, hey, wait a minute here. I spent 3 years in a jail cell because I walked into a Capitol building after being waved in. That's what weaponization looks like. That doesn't count. That is corruption of the utmost, we're told. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Here's what Jim had to say about his family's experience. We contacted Emily about selling our home of 25 years. Emily suggested making some improvements to the home that would increase its value. She was very patient with us throughout the 2 years it took to complete the improvements. We had many questions, and she was always quick to respond. We were selling our home in Springfield, buying one in Texas. The process went smoothly because Emily took care of the details. We highly recommend Emily. She's professional, knowledgeable, and personal. And you can just read so many reviews like that. Of course, I've had my, compared to Sarah, limited experience. Hers was about a 2-year experience as well, looking for that perfect home. And Emily certainly, she is a lot of things, and patient, a lot of good things, that is, and patient is certainly one of those things, and it serves you well. A lot of these folks that want to sell you a home, they just want to sell you a home, get you in one as quick as possible, and move on to the next one, get that commission check. If you've ever worked with Emily, you know that is not her way of doing things. It's making sure you get in the right home, not the first one or the quickest one. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. A Democratic city council member who once welcomed, quote, change from socialist Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson is now admitting that he's gravely concerned about the business exodus affecting the major American city. Oh. Oh, really? Are you? This comes as blue states like Washington and New York face a business exodus in favor of more market-friendly red states. Starbucks, which, by the way, Starbucks just announced, I think, around 250 layoffs in Seattle. It's either Seattle or Portland. It's just another recent, like within the last 24 hours, made this announcement. This concern comes as these major players announce major expansion into other states and other cities that are red states and red cities. Wilson, the new mayor, and a self-proclaimed socialist, recently went viral for laughing off the exodus of billionaires and business leaders from her city, saying, quote, "I think the claims that millionaires are going to leave our state are super overblown. The ones that leave, like, bye." Less than 5 months into Wilson's term, Seattle Democrat Council member Rob Saka admitted to the New York Times, "I'm gravely concerned. This is real." Yeah, it is real. But this is not a surprise. This is what happens. This is the problem with people on the left. This is the problem with big government socialists. These are real things that happen to real people. They love to play make-believe. They love to cosplay, if you will, or at least in their minds. They love to get in charge and tinker around with people's lives as if it's nothing, and then people's lives get altered drastically. And fortunately, there are enough states run by level-headed individuals that are not anti-growth, anti-success, and anti-business. There's at least a place for these businesses to go, and go they are. Springfield's Talk 1041. My name is Nick Reed. Hour 3, we've got the podcast at ksgf.com, the app. You can listen as well as watch past shows and watch them in real time on YouTube. That's Springfield's Talk 1041. And then, of course, we do have Spotify, iTunes, if I didn't mention that. Socialist Nitha Raman, this is the third primary candidate in the mayoral race out in Los Angeles. There's I know at least one other candidate because Spencer Pratt has referenced this other candidate as a candidate that he thinks actually is legit in terms of caring about the city as opposed to Bass and Raman. But that individual that he referenced doesn't really poll anywhere significantly, so not getting as much play. But Nitha Raman, who's a wife to the TV producer for the show Modern Family, is racking up all sorts of 1% multimillionaire Hollywood support for the LA mayor's race. And this is how socialism works. She has gotten a number of A-list contributors like Tina Fey and Colin Yost. He's on Saturday Night Live, as Tina Fey was as well. These are people that, many of them don't even live in Los Angeles. A recent profile from Variety noted that Raman's Hollywood connections run deep due to her husband, TV writer-producer Vali Chandrasekaran, who wrote for 30 Rock, Modern Family. With some of her financial contributors, including Tina Fey, Mindy Kaling, Mike Shore, Colin Yost, Nicholas Stoller, Cord Jefferson, David Mandel, and many others. This past April, actor Adam Scott introduced her at a backyard fundraiser in Santa Monica. Scott saying she wins because she gets blank done, and she gets blank done because she has a plan for everything. One of the characteristics of people on the left is they really truly make claims that are not grounded in anything based in reality. They'll make these statements about, oh, she just really gets things. Gets what done? You notice they don't list the things. When they talk about what a champion someone is, they don't list the results, how it is, what's the before and after. Before so-and-so got involved, this is what it looked like, and look at it now. You notice the left never does a before and after. Trump does. You want to know why? Ron DeSantis does. You want to know why? Because they make things better. They make things better. Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris. You just go down the list of Democrats. They never say, hey, look at how things were before I came along, and then look at them afterwards. Because things are always worse. Listen, you people that vote Democrat, you have got to understand how confusing it is for the rest of us. When these people you support, they themselves never tout their accomplishments. Gavin Newsom doesn't say, hey, you remember the homeless problem 20 years ago I started tackling and promised to clean up? Look at what it was like then versus now. Oh, you know how the energy prices out in California used to be higher than they were everyone else? Look at how they're lower now. Give you the flip side of that. Mississippi, a state that once upon a time rated in the bottom in terms of education, and then several years ago decided to go back to the good old days before the creative learning and all of that, and now they are far superior to states like California, particularly for minorities. And do you know what Mississippi does? They make sure everyone knows it. They're like, yes, Look at what it used to be like. Look at what it's like now. Do you find any Democrat, I mean, unless they just talk about spending, before I came along, only $20 billion was spent on this program. Now it's $30 billion. Okay, but what has the result been? Gavin Newsom can brag about the massive amounts of money that he spent on homelessness, but let's talk about the results. It's increased homelessness. And then, of course, the same people who say you have to elect me to protect you from Donald Trump, whenever you point out their failures, they say, well, it's Donald Trump's fault. I thought you were supposed to be the buffer. This is why you said you need to get elected, to fight against him, to win against him, that you were going to be the great protection against him. Yet, when the failures under your leadership are very clear, you suddenly were unable to protect us from Donald Trump? You folks on the left, you have to understand how people who just want better results, that expect better results, if someone comes along and says, hire me, I'm going to do this job, if they do worse at it, it's weird for us to conceptualize this idea of, oh, let's do more of that. Well, that doesn't mean that Republicans have all the answers. Lord knows that's not the case. Usually, when Republicans fail, it's because they're trying to accommodate the wishes by compromising with Democrats. That's how they go off kilter. But when they stick to the principles of law and order, smaller government, then things just get better. Again, this is why people flee blue states and they move to red states. Despite the rhetoric against red states. If you didn't know any better, you'd think that red states were these horrible cesspools of disease-ridden people because they're anti-vaxxers and they're just a bunch of racists having Klan meetings and neo-Nazi meetings all the time, and it's just the worst place ever. You got, the rich are really, really rich and the poor really, really poor. You would think that's the reality. Yet, those are the states that people flee to. And they flee from the great utopians of everyone becoming equal and everyone winning with free health care and free housing for the homeless. This story earlier, one of the Democrat council members in Seattle that was so excited about the new socialist mayor, just months into her turn, suddenly very gravely concerned, he tells the New York Times, because businesses are fleeing. There's an intellectual struggle that happens with Americans that truly attempt to pick leadership that is going to result in a better quality of life. And that is when they watch these elected officials on the left. Are they really that stupid, or are they deliberately destroying things just so that they can get even greater control? I think sometimes it's a mixed bag. I do believe some know what they're doing. It's unavoidable to recognize the results. I do believe others are just stupid. And then some, you get a combination of stupid people who do know what they're doing. Springfield's Talk 1041, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 76. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, we'll see a slight chance for showers in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 66. And taking a look at Thursday, a 50% chance of showers with a high near 73.
Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Springfield Livestock Marketing Center coming up at the end of this month, May 29th and the 30th to be exact. Springfield Livestock will host a 2-day horse sale. Friday, that sale will start at 5 p.m. with saddles and horses to follow. And then on Saturday, they'll start at 9 a.m. with tack. 1 p.m., they'll focus on outside items, so think things like trailers and such. And then at 5 p.m., they'll start with their horse sale. Now, if you want to check out some of the horses that will be up for sale, visit their Facebook page, Springfield Livestock Horse Sale. Once again, that sale will be May 29th and the 30th. And if you want to view other upcoming sales, visit their website, click on that calendar of events, springfieldlivestock.com. And for more information on Springfield Livestock, plus contact info, all that fun stuff, that can be found under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
This story regarding socialist Nitha Raman, who is running in third behind Spencer Pratt and Karen Bass for the mayoral race in Los Angeles, and having all of the rich Hollywood support for her race. This is what a lot of folks who aren't familiar with socialist countries don't realize, is that the elite, really wealthy, ultimately end up gravitating towards the people in power, and you end up with no middle class. Now, some, depending on the industry, when socialists come in, Cuba's a great example of this, they will take over industries, they'll imprison certain industry leaders that aren't loyal to their cause, but it's all about loyalty and not about corporations, not about finances, not about distribution of wealth. And so if you are an industry that is skeptical of socialism, then usually you'll be targeted. But if you are one that jumps on board, like, yeah, this is great, you generally benefit from it because government has access to the money, to the contracts, to the deals, and it all becomes one giant friends network. And eventually, what happens is exactly what we're seeing happen in Los Angeles, happening in Seattle. It's the extremely wealthy fall into two categories. One, not friendly with the authorities, and so they leave. And then there are those that are friendly with the authorities and they stay and continue to live a lavish lifestyle. Meanwhile, because things are so poorly run, the middle class becomes lower class, the lower class stays lower class, and you just eliminate the middle class. This is how it works in every socialist country. The upside for people who live in socialist-run cities or socialist-run states is they can move to another state. If you're in Cuba, you're kind of stuck there. If you're in Venezuela, you're stuck now. There were hundreds of thousands of people who fled Venezuela a little easier than those who fled Cuba because, of course, they're an island. But nonetheless, this is why people try to flee those countries. And I keep going back to speaking directly to the few people out there that may think socialism is the key. Why do you think people flee socialist countries to go to non-socialist countries? It doesn't go the other way. It does not go the other way. When the Berlin Wall fell, really, people only went one way. Before it fell, people only were risking their lives to go one way. And it wasn't towards the socialism. No. That's what some people call a hint. They call a clue. And the insanity of people not getting this. You do not redistribute wealth under socialism or communism or fascism or Marxism or Leninism in a way in which everything is wonderful and, oh, it's so much better now. That's not how it works. Under the Reagan administration and the Trump administration, when meaningful tax reform was put into place, lessening the control government had over the average person in this country, the income gaps shrunk. When there is an increase in government, there is an increase. Look at Los Angeles. Look at Seattle. Again, you just go down the list of these Democrat-run cities and you see the income gaps growing. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class get poorer. These wealthy white liberals that are part of the Hollywood scene, many of which don't even live in Los Angeles, but live in New York City, that are supporting the socialist candidate for mayor out there, have the luxury of not having to suffer the consequences of her policies and what they will be, because it's not going to be any better than Karen Bass. And you think about the audacity of those people when somebody like Spencer Pratt comes along and he's like, you know what? I'm just mad because my house burned down when it didn't have to burn down. I'm mad that my neighbor's house is burned down when they didn't have to burn down, and I'm mad that we're not being allowed to rebuild. And I'm mad that my family can't walk down the streets without being accosted by some homeless person. I'm mad that we can't let our kids play in the park for fear they'll get poked by some sort of needle that's diseased. I'm mad that our kids are subject to failing schools. And then you get these white, liberal, rich elites that from afar, oftentimes a different state even, say, don't vote for that guy. Vote for the people who created the mess you're in. I mean, they are fundraising. There's an upcoming fundraiser for the socialist candidate of a number of these celebrities. Variety noting on Thursday, supporters will hold a fundraiser at Dynasty Typewriter, the Westlake Comedy Club, where a cast including Lake Bell, Will Forte, Adam Devine, Bobby Moynihan, Chelsea Peretti, Paul Scheer will perform a live table read of Harley Quinn, a very problematic Valentine's Day special. I can't imagine being so detached from any sort of empathy of other human beings when you see them, what they've gone through under current leadership, and you are completely unaffected by it. Your answer is to try to help get elected the people who created the problem for them in the first place. There are reports that Trump is thinking about endorsing Spencer Pratt. I don't know if this is an actual report or if this is hoping to erode some of the support for Spencer Pratt, because for all of the clout that Trump does have in certain parts of the country, I think most of us can agree Los Angeles is not one of them. And what Spencer Pratt is really gunning towards right now, he recognizes he has to convert a lot of Democrats over. He has to convert a lot of people who hate Donald Trump over to his side, which is why wisely he has made it very clear while people label him Republican, he's like, I'm just a guy that is running to make things better. I do not think of myself as being a member of any particular political party. I consider myself as a really angry Los Angeles resident whose house unnecessarily burned to the ground. And he's targeting all sorts of categories of people, most recently yoga moms, that in Los Angeles certainly aren't Trump supporters. And I think he's been very, very, very wise in using some of the talk directly and playing to the people like Trump does, utilizing social media like Ma'am Donnie does, and being able to drum up a level of support that normally a, quote, white guy, which he's being criticized for being by racists in the Democrat Party, a level of support somebody like that would not normally get in Los Angeles. And some of those people that may, in fact, he's running one of the many social media ads he's running right now are a bunch of yoga moms, Los Angeles yoga moms that are secretly supporters of Spencer Pratt, and they're kind of whispering about it. The whole idea is to create this sense that it's okay if you hate Trump to vote. It's okay if you hate Republicans to vote Spencer. That doesn't matter. Yes, he's not some liberal left-winger, but it's okay. And giving permission for some of these people on the left to sort of quietly vote for him, and the idea of Donald Trump coming out and supporting him, I do not think would help. I think it would hurt, being that it's Los Angeles. And I don't know that it isn't a story that's being planted more so to try and erode support away from Spencer Pratt and try and deny him even being in the top 2 vote getters in the election just a couple of weeks from today. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Update on the weather moments from now. First, the latest traffic update.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see showers and thunderstorms throughout the day with a high near 76. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, a slight chance for showers in the morning, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 66. And for Thursday, we'll see a 50% chance of showers with a high near 73.
One last bit of I don't know if it's amusing, if it's nefarious, but storyline regarding the LA's race, obviously the fires and the devastating destruction from the fires that still exist today because of an either unwillingness or lack of ability of the Democrats to successfully govern. That's a big part of this election, and it was noticed within the last several days that if you went to Google Maps, it swapped out the imagery of all of the destruction with nice little neighborhoods as they once upon a time existed. As you can imagine, this caught a great deal of attention, Spencer Pratt being one of them, simply posting to Google WTF. And Google responded saying that it is a technical issue that's been fixed, and post-fire imagery is rolling out again now across Google Maps and Earth, and that it was just part of a routine update, that it was a goof, and it's what we have come to learn is consistently the sort of goof that only benefits one side. When Trump was running, constantly there would be, a disinformation or imagery that popped up that was counter to a narrative of the Trump campaign. And when the social media sites would get called out on it, oh, it was an update. It was an error in coding. Oh, it was some new person that accidentally did this, but don't worry, we fixed the problem. It never really seems to go the other way. Isn't that remarkable? In reality, if you do want to believe that these things aren't accidental and coincidentally the sort of updates that always seem to benefit the Democrats, they at this point, I think, really work against them because people don't trust these outlets any longer. And when they see something like that occur, they no longer believe it was an accident, it was a standard update, it was an oopsie daisies, because that has been an excuse too many times. It's kind of, I think it's boneheaded anyhow. I just, and I suppose every so often it could once in a while be an innocent update or upgrade, but more times than not, I'm sure it isn't. And these are the sort of things that at this point tend to help the Republican, help Trump, help the conservative, because it simply reinforces for the average person what it is that average Americans are up against. Now, here's something that may have flown under the radar for a number of you. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee yesterday interviewed a jail guard who claimed to be the last person to see convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein alive, Politico reported. Tova Noel was one of the two prison guards on duty at the Metropolitan Correction Center in New York City on August 9, 2019, the night before Epstein was found dead in his cell. Just a handful of the committee's dozens of members were present for the transcribed closed-door interview with Noel, according to Politico. According to lawmakers, Noel received a total of $12,000 in cash deposits from April 2018 to July of 2019, ABC News reported Monday. Noel made a $5,000 cash deposit just 10 days before Epstein's body was found, according to the New York Post. Democratic New Mexico Representative Melanie Stansbury, who was one of the few committee members to attend a portion of the interview, blamed the committee's Republican majority, which she called chaotic, and its constant changing of the schedule for the lackluster turnout of lawmakers, the outlet reported. The Democrat added that she thought Noel had testified honestly. The House is not conducting a vote until Wednesday, according to the lower chamber's schedule. Committee Chairman James Comer, Kentucky Republican, did not take part in the interview due to a family matter, a committee spokesperson told Politico. Spokesperson for Comer told the Daily Caller News Foundation that a transcript of the interview is set to be released as soon as possible, but declined to immediately comment. Democrat Virginia Rep. Suhas Subramaniam, a committee member, told C-SPAN outside the closed-door interview that his takeaway is that the system once again failed survivors and failed to bring Jeffrey Epstein to justice. It was clear incompetence and just a lack of oversight over Jeffrey Epstein that led him to being able to commit suicide, emphasizing, I do not believe that he did commit suicide. Or rather, I do believe that he committed suicide. But I do think Epstein, was treated different from the other inmates. Jeffrey Epstein got special treatment in that facility. He had access to extra bed linens, which helped him commit suicide. Noel told investigators back in 2021 she thought she was the last person to see Epstein alive before his purported suicide, which has since spurred numerous theories about what actually happened during those final hours. The guard typed a Google search query for latest on Epstein in jail twice on the early morning of August 10th, 2019, with both attempts coming less than an hour before the sex offender was found dead, according to the New York Post. Noel, a relatively inexperienced correction officer at the time, was conducting an inmate count around 10 p.m. on August 9th at the MCC, where she said she plugged in Epstein's sleep apnea device upon his request, the Miami Herald reported. She told investigators that while nothing seemed unusual with Epstein at the time, exceptions were being made for him because he was Epstein. She said that one of those exceptions was allowing him to use the device, which had a long cord, something no other inmate was allowed to have access to. In November of 2019, 3 months after Epstein's death, prosecutors filed charges against Noel and Michael Thomas, the other MCC security guard on duty on the night of August 9th, 2019, alleging that the guards fell asleep on the job, failed to adequately carry out their duties, and falsified records to hide this. Federal prosecutors eventually dropped the charges against Noel and Thomas, who were both fired in December of 21, while the trial against Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, was ongoing. Noel, an Army veteran, graduated college in 2017, started work for the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 2018, the year before Epstein's death, according to PBS. So take it for what it's worth. One of the things that I did always find to be somewhat of a contradiction is to validate the claim that he committed suicide was that he was suicidal. This is what, some of the validating information was. But then they had also taken him off of suicide watch. That, to me, seems like the sort of thing that you would do if all of that information is accurate, if you were hoping the person did commit suicide. And I also don't know. This is a new bit of information that may mean nothing. It seems to me, if you are going to commit suicide, unprompted, you probably have it planned out a day or two in advance. You think, all right, today's the day I'm going to do it. Why would you have a sleep apnea device? Why would you request it to be plugged in for usage if you're just going to commit suicide? That seems to me like the sort of thing you wouldn't be worried about. I mean, if my plan is to commit suicide, I'm not worried about whether or not I'm going to have a good night's sleep because I'm going to be committing suicide. Now, I suppose, arguably, at any given moment, a person can just up and decide, go from, nope, I'm planning on sleeping tonight and I want a good night's sleep, which is why I requested my sleep apnea machine to be plugged in, and then suddenly deciding, no, you know what, I'm going to kill myself after all. I get, anything is possible, but that sleep apnea machine request just seems a bit odd to come from someone who is planning to kill himself. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Summer is right around the corner, and if your AC is already struggling to keep up, now is the time to get the issues addressed before it gets hot. And my go-to guys are always Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Now, I've used them for everything from repairs to a new unit install about a year ago. They've installed a couple of mini split units out at my parents' home, and I have even used them for that 24/7 emergency service line for my water heater about a couple months ago at this point. And honestly, their friendliness and their expertise is why I always use them and I always recommend them. So if you are out there looking for a great HVAC company, you've definitely found it with Russell and his team. If it is time to have them out to your home or your business, reach out to Foreman Mechanical. You can do that at foremanmechanical.com. And of course, you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
A couple of separate stories here, but both are indications as to why it is that we desperately need to shore up our election integrity and why it is all that much more egregious that under the so-called leadership of Thune in the Senate as a Republican, his refusal to get this done is outrageous. You've got Town Hall reporting on President Trump calling for the Department of Justice to open an investigation into the state of Maryland after they sent out mail-in ballots to individuals of the incorrect political party of the state's closed primary election. After the mistake, the Maryland Board of Elections made the decision to mail out additional ballots, despite having no ability to indicate which ballots were originally sent out incorrectly. Election officials have not publicly released a plan for how to invalidate the original ballots. Well, that's because there is no plan. Nor, arguably, could there be one. I mean, they're out there. You have mailed out duplicate ballots to people. You know, this is part of the wonders of mail-in balloting. Dan Cox, a candidate in the gubernatorial race, criticized the decision as it creates an environment for doubling the potential for voter fraud via mail-in ballots. Well, sure, of course it does. Trump's statement laid the blame at the feet of Maryland's Democrat Governor Wes Moore, saying that the move was to make sure the Democrats win. Quote, in addition, many of these ballots went to Democrats, so any Republican running for Maryland doesn't have a chance, Trump said in a post on Truth Social. This was done by the corrupt governor of the state, Wes Moore. He allowed this to happen in order to make sure Democrats win. It never made sense to me that Maryland was considered an automatic Democrat state, but now I see why. I'm sure this has gone on for years. I'm going to ask the Attorney General of the United States and the DOJ to bring an immediate investigation into the situation, Trump added. The Maryland primary elections will be held June 23rd. Now, I don't know whether these ballots were disproportionately sent to Democrats. I don't know if there's a way to determine that. But shouldn't that be irrelevant? Every time there is some form of complete cluster when it comes to voting, and Democrats are in charge, they go to great lengths to point out that it's not corruption, it's just incompetence. They just don't know what they're doing. How is that any better? I mean, when it really comes down to it. Now, obviously, but in terms of motivation, I suppose if you had some sort of election that was all screwy because of duplicate ballots being sent out to 500,000 people, is that the right number, 500,000? Maybe that was a separate story I read that. It was some massive number. Maybe it wasn't that, but it's a significant amount. And I suppose, ideally, if that does occur, you'd like to think it isn't for nefarious purposes. But if it means you can't trust the outcome of the election, you still can't trust the outcome of the election. The Democrats have created this sense that as long as it's incompetence, it's okay. Oh, well, don't worry about it. It was just human error. Oh, it was not an attempt to cheat. Does that really make it better? in terms of the outcome of the election, and the people of whatever state or the country or the county, wherever it is, not having any clue whether or not that winner is a legitimate winner? I don't care if it's incompetency or corruption. I care about putting people in charge that stop it from happening. And it is amazing how low the standards have become for Democrat voters, that they are perfectly at ease and comfortable with this constantly occurring in counties and in jurisdictions with election boards run by Democrats. And they're perfectly comfortable with the fact that they're told that we're just a bunch of idiots that don't know how to do this properly. Oh, okay. 5 stars for you. Ozark's elder law, I think one of the most shocking revelations for a lot of people, whether it's, God forbid, their own personal experience or just the sharing of information. And I talked about this with Lori Rook on Friday. The belief that as long as you're married, you have medical power of attorney over your spouse. Should they, let's say they're in a coma, and that decision comes whether to do this or whether to do that. In Missouri, you do not have that authority unless you have it spelled out and in legal documents. I know that's shocking to people. That was like one of the huge arguments during the whole gay marriage thing. Remember, it was all built upon this idea that it isn't fair because, that's the only way that a spouse is able to make those decisions. And that's irrelevant in a lot of states, and Missouri is one of them, unless, again, you have that stuff locked down. Ozark's elder law can do it for you. Now, they do so much else as well, whether it's medical power of attorney or over your finances, talking about nursing home care, how to pay for that, how it is to leave assets to family members without them being jerked around by the government and being charged out the yahoo for the pleasure of you dying, which government loves to do that death tax thing. They can help you set all of that up to secure things the way that you want them best as possible. 10 area locations, consultations free to let you know what you need to do and what it'll cost to get it done. OzarksElderLaw.com, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. I mentioned the story in Maine and the massive voter fraud there, and then it was in California, just last week, it was revealed that they found batches of uncounted ballots regarding redistricting. And Just the News has a story about the DOJ exposing two 20-year-long California cheating schemes that have been going on out there, including a guilty plea by Brenda Lee Brown Armstrong, a felony charge, and Marina Del Rey, 64, of California, and or in Marina Del Rey. But anyhow, these are plea deals in which they've acknowledged for decades and decades they've been illegally paying people to get registered, and you've got just the ability to cheat because of lax voter restriction laws. And that's why they're so important. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.